This seems like a good way to start. Once upon a time, a man walks into a bar. And he sees his best friend sitting over there at a table. He walks up to him. His best friend is staring down at the tabletop where is this very small man playing this very small piano very beautifully. And the hero of our story, we'll call him Fred, asks his friend, "Oh my gosh, he's so little and he's so good at the piano. Where did you get him?" And his friend doesn't even look up from the tabletop. He just stares down and he says, "There's a genie out in the alleyway. He's giving away wishes." And Fred wants some of this, so he rushes out to the back of the bar, throws open the door, and sure enough, there's this huge, splendid genie standing there in the alleyway. And he kind of screws up his courage. He says, "Genie, please grant my wish. I'd like $1 million." And the genie looks at him for a moment, then he nods his great head, and there's this blinding flash of light in the alleyway. And when Fred can open his eyes again, the whole alley is full of the stench and the clamor of 1 million quacking ducks. Not bucks, ducks, there's 1 million of them. So they're maybe this high on him. They're in his face, they're pecking him. He's got to get away. So he gets the door to the bar open again. He runs inside. He's got his cloud of ducks following after him. And he yells to his friend. He says, "Can you believe that stupid genie? I asked him for $1 million. He gave me 1 million ducks." And his friend finally looks up from the tabletop, and he's got this single tear rolling down his face. And he says, "Yeah, do you really think I asked the genie for a pianist that was 12 inches long?" So that's kind of a lame joke, an old joke, but I have a point about it. The point is that a joke is a story. When we tell each other jokes, we're telling each other these small, funny stories. You go see a stand-up comedian, you're going to see a virtuoso oral story performer. And I think it's this great example of jokes, of the way that story infiltrates just about everything that people do, but in ways that we are hardly aware of. I wrote a book about this called The Storytelling Animal. And the book gets in on this ancient, simple debate. And the debate is, what is a human being? What is it? What is it that most sets our species apart from the rest of creation? And when you call the species Homo sapien, that's an argument. The argument is that it's our sapience, it's our intelligence, it's our big human brains that most sets us apart. But other scientists, other philosophers say, no, really we're not all that reasonable, all that logical most of the time. Really it's our upright posture, it's our opposable thumbs, it's how sophisticated our cultures are, how sophisticated our language is. And I'm not here to argue against any of that. These things are all important. I'm just saying that one thing of equal stature is left off this list, and that's the way that human beings live their lives inside stories. So Homo sapien, that's a pretty good definition for the species. But Homo fictus, fiction man, that's about equally accurate. Man is a storytelling animal. Let me give you a little sense for what I mean. It's the 1940s. There's these two psychologists named Heider and Simmel. And they create this very short, very crude animated film. And they show it to 120 people. I'll let it run while we talk. They show it to 120 people. At the end, they ask them a very simple question. What did you see? And at the end, only 3 of those 120 people gave a truly reasonable, rational, straightforward response. What did I see? I saw triangles, circles, moving around on a blank screen. That's all I saw. I saw geometry. Everyone else, 117 out of 120, they see a story. They see a little soap opera. They see a little romance, a little comedy, a little epic, a little tragedy. And it's this wonderful illustration. This experiment has been replicated many, many times by now. It's this wonderful illustration of the storytelling mind at work. It's not only that your mind is capable of taking these raw, crude, geometrical cues and turning them into a rich, confident story. It's that most of us can't not do it. We simply can't help ourselves. We do it automatically, reflexively, without even trying. And what's also important is if you ask those 120 people, what story did you see? They all see different stories. It's a tremendous amount of diversity. That's important because what it shows us is that when you view this little film, you're not experiencing fiction, you're not consuming fiction, you're the one who's creating the fiction, and you're doing it effortlessly and on the fly. Now, of course, the point has nothing to do with how your mind responds to simple animation. The point is that this is what we are doing all the time, every day in our lives. We are trying to impose the order of story structure on the chaos of existence. So we all know the story of Peter Pan. He's the boy who won't grow up. He's the one who will not leave the land of make-believe behind. But we're all a lot more like Peter Pan than we know. We never really leave the land of fun, imaginative simulation, the land of make-believe. We just change how we do it. So instead of making up our little pretend scenarios and playing them out like we do when we are kids, as we get older, we increasingly enter into pretend scenarios created by other people. Novels, films, short stories. These are all provinces of Neverland. We're just addicted to these things. The average American, through this screen alone, through the television screen, is getting more than 4 hours of storytelling per day. It means we're just addicted to news stories and sports stories and sex stories and murder stories and the interactive stories of video games, which are really cool and allow you to become the rock-jawed hero of the action film. And there are reality stories. This is one of the jackasses from Jersey Shore. There's commercial stories. There's the holy stories that are at the center of all of the world's religious traditions. There's the stories that we get from stone, that artists tell us in stone or in song or in paint or in human movement. And of course, there's the stories of dreams. We go to sleep at night, but not our brains. They stay up all night long telling themselves stories. We wake up in the morning, we keep daydreaming. We have these little films that play in our head where all of our sick little fantasies come true. And of course, story is the fabric of our social lives. It's what human social interaction largely consists of. What do you do when you get together with your friends? You sit down, you trade stories from your life back and forth over the beer, over the coffee. You gossip, tell stories about other people. So you get my point. The point is that human beings live inside a storm of stories. We live in stories all day long. We dream in stories all night long. Story is how we communicate with each other. It's how we connect with each other. It's how we learn. It's how we think. And without story to organize your experience on Earth, you'd experience your life as a blooming, buzzing confusion. It would be all sound and fury. It would signify nothing. Story's ubiquitous. Story's powerful. Nothing in human experience rivets attention, hooks human attention, holds human attention like a story. But I want to pivot a little bit now and ask why. What are some of the sources of this power? And to get some insight into this, I want to watch another film. So I want you to first imagine that it's 1896, and you're living in Paris, and you're going to see something that you've heard about, but you've never actually witnessed. And you walk out of these hot, bright streets into this cool, dark theater. And you sit down in a chair, much like the chair you're sitting in now, and you look up at a screen that is much like the screen you're looking at now. And at some point, the screen just erupts in light, and it's like this window has been ripped open on an alternative world. And what you see in that window terrifies you. You're at one of the world's first public film screenings. And we're going to watch this film now. It's from 1896. It's the Lumiere brothers. It's called The Arrival of the Train. But I want you to brace yourself because arguably this is the world's first horror film. Okay, nothing happens. A train shows up at a station, and a bunch of people in funny clothes mill around. That's it. So none of you were terrified. I didn't see anybody gasp or scream. But according to film lore, the original audience for this film was so scared they leapt up out of their seats and stampeded for the back of the theater. They didn't want to get run over by that train. Now, unfortunately, film historians have sort of rained on this parade. They're not really sure it happened this way. They think the story's maybe a little bit exaggerated. But whether the story is true or false doesn't really matter for our purposes. What's important is what the story is trying to convey. It's saying that that original Parisian audience, those people were rubes. They were highly unsophisticated about the illusion of film. But nowadays, after 100 years, we're all very sophisticated about film, and movie trains don't scare us anymore. But is that actually true? Not so fast. Let's look at one more clip. This is from the horror movie franchise, Paranormal Activity. It's a superb ad campaign because it not only shows you what's happening on the screen, it turns the camera around and it shows you what's happening in the audience. What's going on here? You know, movie trains aren't supposed to scare us anymore. So, seriously, what's going on? These people are not idiots. This is not their first movie. They know that blood isn't real. They know there's no goblins or monsters in the theater. They know everything they're seeing is just flickers of light on a two-dimensional background. So why are these people treating these fake things they know are fake, as though they're real? And the neuroscience of the brain on story gives us a bit of insight into this. You can slide a person into an fMRI machine, and the machine will read the brain as the brain is reading a story. It can watch the brain while the brain is watching a story. And one of the cool things to come out of this research is that your brain looks less like a spectator on the action than it does a participant. So if Clint Eastwood is up there on screen and he's angry, your brain looks angry too. If the scene is sad, your brain looks sad too. Not like you're sitting back passively and watching someone else get angry or sad, but you are actually experiencing the emotions yourself. And you see that in the Paranormal Activity clip. These people are treating fake things as real. They're dancing around in their seat to avoid the knife. They're screaming. Why do people scream? They scream for help. I like it when they pull in their elbows and scrunch in their knees. You know, they're balling up to protect their vital organs. Their brains are instructing their bodies to do all of the things that they would do if they were actually under mortal attack. So story is so powerful for us, at least in part, because at a neurological level, whatever's happening on the page or on the stage isn't just happening to them, it's happening to us as well. We know it's fake, we totally know it's fake, but that doesn't stop unconscious parts of the brain from processing what we're seeing as though it's real. So what are some of the implications of this? Of the way that we spend our lives, huge hunks of our lives, marinating ourselves in these authentic simulations of human experience, these fictions. I think there's a lot of implications to this. We'll just talk about one. So if I'm in my English class and I ask my students, hey, you know, have you ever thought about this? It's kind of weird that people like stories so much. Why do we care so much, especially about fiction, about the fake struggles of fake people? Why is that interesting to us? And mostly the students have never thought about it before and they scratch their heads a little bit, but they always come up with the same answer. Some of them will hesitantly raise their hand and they'll say, well, it's escapism. It's escapism. My life is hard, but Storyland is easy. I go into Storyland, I get this little vacation from the struggles of my life. I have a nice time doing it. I walk away unscathed, unchanged. But if we think that, we're wrong. For more than a decade now, this studies coming out of the psychology lab are showing that the stories we consume shape us profoundly. They shape our attitudes, our beliefs, our behaviors. Just one piece of evidence from this rather large research program. If you get a bunch of people in a psych lab and you show them episodes of a TV show like Will and Grace, a TV show that treats homosexuals and homosexuality in a non-judgmental way. You can measure people's attitudes, and they reliably move in the same non-judgmental direction. And if a lot of us watch shows with likable gay characters, shows like Modern Family and Will and Grace and Glee and so on and so forth, then you can have a mover of massive social change. So American attitudes towards homosexuality have been liberalizing with dizzying speed. And social scientists give TV a lot of the credit. They even have a name for the liberalizing trend. It's been called the Will and Grace effect. So as I sum up, I want to leave you with two of my favorite images of the storytelling animal in action. The first one you'll remember from earlier in the presentation. These are Kung San Bushmen from 1947. The storyteller's there in the middle. He's got his arms up in the air. He's like a wizard. He's like a conductor. He is orchestrating all of the feelings in these people's hearts, all the thoughts in their heads. He's brought his people together, skin up against skin, mind up against mind. He's wielding enormous power. And he's doing so only with the most basic, simple human toolkit. He's got his hands, his expressive face, and his story. And I don't have anything smart to say about this. I just think it's quite wonderful that this is the kind of animal that we were. And it is the kind of animal we still are, an animal that helplessly needs stories in the best times and the worst times. So these are storytelling animals from London during the Blitz. They're living in a time of real fear and privation, real danger. And yet here they are, picking through the bombed out remains of this library in search of the solace of story. Thanks very much.